If there's anything we've learned in recent years, it's that bringing friends and family together is what life is all about. And what better time to gather than the holidays? But when your home is the hosting destination, you're going to need a little more room for your guests. Maybe you're thinking about finally upgrading your guest room mattress. Or maybe you need a new sofa sectional to fit your space. No matter what you're looking for, Ashley has everything you need. Visit your local Ashley or shop online at ashley.com.
Welcome to the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. Now, here's your hosts, B. Cox and the crew.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. It's a perspective of the classics from a fresh point of view. We appreciate you for taking your time and lending your ears to our perspective. You could be anywhere listening to anything, but you're right here with us, so we thank you. With you today is yours truly, B. Cox, and want to give a shout out once again to all the fans out there stateside and worldwide for continuing to support the show. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to show us love, spreading the word out there. Our numbers continue to grow. Thank you out there to all of our partners out there, fellow podcasters, content creators who show us some love. Also, big shout out there to Technically a Conversation. We have a collaboration going on with them right now. We definitely can see the love that they are showing us out there with our ad running on their program. So shout out to them over there. We definitely love the fact that we can see the growth that is coming as a result of our promo running over there, and hopefully they're seeing the same from their promo running on our show as well. As a reminder, just want to make sure that you all are going to our website, vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. You can go there, check out the back catalog of episodes. Also, you can leave us a voice note, leave us a review. Also, you can go to our Buy Me a Coffee page to support the show monetarily, to show us that you support us, and also to make sure that the vault stays open for many years to come. So go there to show us some love on the website. Also, all the social media page links are there as well. That's vaultclassicpod.com. And we have a bonus episode here on the Vault Classic Music Reviews. We don't do this too often, but we actually have a Pop Culture Corner bonus segment today. And that's when we talk about things in the past and pop culture. We talk about movies. We talk about television shows. We talk about many different things in the last 20, 25, and 30 years that happened that we like to commemorate when their anniversaries come. And today we have a special one. And we're going to go back 20 years ago for this special Pop Culture Corner. About 20 years ago, there was a movie that came out. And this movie touched a lot of different people in different ways. But in particular, for this moviegoer and for this music fan, it touched me in the fact that in some ways, I do like black rom-coms, especially the ones where they have good actors in them. And I think they had some, for me, pretty decent actors in this one. And in this particular one, they had the it factors when it came to black rom-coms in this particular movie. And they talked about hip-hop. So I was in. And at this time, I was in college. And so you take black rom-coms, you take hip-hop, you put that together, and it was a winning formula to me. So we're going to go back to October 11th, 2002, and the theatrical release of none other than Brown Sugar, starring Taye Diggs and Sanaa Lathan, also co-starring Nicole Parker, Boris Kodjoe, Queen Latifah, and then known as Mos Def, now known as Yasin Bey, a romantic comedy based around hip-hop. Again, a movie that did very, very well considering audience and the fact that at that time there were black rom-coms that were doing well because it was such a segmented audience. But I thought, considering the fact that the budget was $8 million and it grossed worldwide $28 million, it actually did pretty well. This was a movie that was based on two friends that had all grown up. Both were actually involved in the work of music. One was a music critic that worked for the Los Angeles Times, then went to work for XXL and was also writing a book. And then the other one was a music executive at a record label. But they were united in the fact that they discovered hip hop on a New York street corner. And now they were going toward their futures as adults. And what united them was two things. One, their love of hip hop. And then eventually, as we came to find out in this movie, their care, admiration, and eventually their love for each other. So it was a formula that some people kind of found a little bit corny, but I thought it was actually a pretty cool thing to run with. Now, the good thing about this movie is that at this time with the cast, and this was directed by Rick Famuyiwa, and he directed this film. It was produced by Magic Johnson. We told you about the stars in this one as well. This also had a lot of cameos by hip-hop personalities, artists as well. You had a lot of cameo appearances, especially in the beginning by Big Daddy Kane, Kool G Rap, Pete Rock, De La Soul, Black Thought, Jermaine Dupri, Talib Kweli, Common, Method Man, Slick Rick, Dana Dane, Dougie Fresh, Questlove, Russell Simmons, Kimora Lee Simmons, Beanie Siegel, Angie Martinez, and Fabolous all appeared in this movie in some form or fashion. So it was a movie that definitely involved the hip-hop community in it as well. That's what I thought was really cool about it. And because it was a movie that talked a lot about the history of hip-hop and getting back to the essence of hip-hop, was something that was a winning formula for a lot of folks and a lot of folks in that audience.
So, when'd you fall in love with hip-hop?
I basically fell in love with hip-hop, you know what I'm saying, when cats first started going out to the parks, you know, with the 2 turntables, the mic.
I think it was 1977.
People are rocking in the parks. I can remember back in the Bronx, 1979.
Set up some turntables in front of the building.
It was getting the power from the street lamps outside.
Plugged it up into the street pole.
MC and DJ and B-boy and breakdancing.
Breakdancing or popping beats or rhymes, you know, I was in love with it.
Probably about 12 years old, man, and I was watching Wild Style.
It was creative, it was new, it was fresh.
Breaking, rapping, battling, just the whole culture period.
Bambaataa show, Africa Islam show. It was just like our way of expression.
Hip-hop spoke directly to me because, you know, it was speaking from the language that the people I was dealing with was speaking in.
And I loved it as soon as I got introduced to it.
I was gonna be dealing with hip-hop whether I wanted to or not. Like a forced marriage, it was predetermined.
And I heard Eric Beats for president, and that kind of changed my life. I heard the message, Melly Mel.
There was a rapper named Eddie Chiba who was one of the pioneers.
When I first heard Sugar Hill Gang.
And Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight. That set it off for rap music. Funky 4 plus 1 more. Plus 1 more, you know what I'm saying? Furious 5, Freedom. Running Them and Houdini freestyling. Sucker MCs by Run DMC. Sucker MCs live.
Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel.
Grandmaster Caz from the Cold Crush Brothers. Cold Crush. Grandmaster Flash. Treacherous 3, Body Rock. Spoonie G, Love Rap.
The first time I heard Rebel Without a Pause.
Eric B. and Rakim. And APMD and them.
I gotta say Public Enemy as a group.
You know, classics, bangers. I mean, to this day, they bangers.
I just loved what it sounded like. And I love what he was saying. You know, the whole slick tongue thing.
I felt like these dudes is the truth. Forget everything else you heard on the radio and all that. This is it. This is what I want to do.
I was in.
It was freedom.
So the main characters in Brown Sugar were Dre and Sydney. Dre played by Taye Diggs. Sydney played by Sanaa Lathan. Now, Dre and Sydney both grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx in the South Bronx, and they discovered hip-hop on a street corner in New York in the Bronx, and that's how they fell in love with hip-hop. And Sid, as the movie's opening, is writing in her book about how she fell in love with hip-hop. And she's talking about how she first fell in love with hip-hop when she heard the Kango crew and the Get Fresh crew, legendary hip-hop crews in hip-hop. And did it, of course, as she was hanging out with Dre when they were kids. She was talking about this at this time in the movie opened. She's working with the Los Angeles Times. She's getting ready to leave the LA Times and go work as the editor-in-chief for XXL, which at that time was a few years old in the real world. And she was getting ready to leave for a big hip-hop publication, which was a big, big deal for a woman to leave to become the editor-in-chief for at XXL. And so she was having a going away party. And in the middle of this, she gets a call from her old friend Dre, who was working as an executive in an A&R with Millennium Records. He's calling because, of course, he sent a music over for her to review at the LA Times, one of the biggest newspapers in the country, to be able to see, and he wants to get a jump to see what that review is going to look like. And of course, and it was actually hilarious how it turned out, because you could tell you were dealing with a homeboy and a homegirl who have been around each other, who have known each other forever.
What's up, baby?
Hey, what's up, girl? You knew I wasn't about to let you leave without my ink, right?
I know you don't have me on speaker, do you?
Nah. I mean, yeah, but it's just me. So, what's good?
Apologize first.
What happened?
Apologize first. You know the routine. Say it. I'm sorry.
All right, I'm sorry for being a self-centered ass.
Actually, change that to impatient, arrogant ass.
Okay, you can't be adding extras here, Sid.
Tell me something. Does Simon know you went to bed till you were 12?
Hey, okay, I'm sorry for being a self-centered, arrogant.
No breakdancing.
You crazy? No, I know. Now I ain't crossing that line. You know you can
Just
never
say it, Dre. I got your review in my hands. I'll put it at the bottom of the stack. Come on.
Aye.
No breakdancing.
No breakdancing ass who's taking advantage of his friendship with the beautiful, smart, forgiving hip-hop writer of the Los Angeles Times.
New editor of Double XL.
The new editor of Double XL for his personal, professional advancement. Are you happy now?
Mm-hmm. Congratulations. I think you got another hit on your hands.
Thank you, Sid.
Couldn't wait 1 week for the review to come out, huh?
So what's the deal? You gonna be home in time for Russell's party?
Oh, look at you, like you on a first name basis with Russell Simmons.
Come on now, you know how I do it.
Yes, I'll be home for the Def Jam party. My bags are packed and my boxes are
Oh, I cannot wait to see you, big time.
Bye, girl. Peace.
Bye. Bye, Dre.
Really crazy, right? So that kind of sets the scene for the movie. So Dre is this A&R for Millennium Records, and he is, not only that, he's also dating and courting this beautiful young attorney, Reese Ellis, who is working in New York City as an attorney, and eventually he proposes to her and they become engaged. Now, as Sydney moves to New York and comes over and they're sort of talking, now the night before his wedding, he and Sydney are sort of like talking, and as he's sort of going through these pre-wedding jitters, she's sort of reassuring him and making sure that everything's going to be okay. And then he and Sid have a kiss, and then they almost do the dirty thing, but then they stop themselves. And then when the wedding comes around, you know, Sydney's there, and then her cousin Francine, who was played by Queen Latifah, and by the way, Reese is played by none other than the lovely Nicole Parker. Francine is sort of deducing that there's things going on between Sydney and Dre, and is trying to tell her to be the one who speaks up and not forever hold her peace during the ceremony. And of course, Sid's not going to do that. And then Dre is going to go ahead and they marry, and him and Reese to get together. And then eventually, certain while, Sydney sort of deals with it, and then eventually she settles into a relationship with a guy who is a NBA player, Kelby, who was played by Boris Kodjoe. And surprisingly enough, Nicole Parker and Boris Kodjoe eventually ended up getting into a relationship some years down the road, and they are now married, as far as I know. I don't know if they've been divorced yet or not. But anyway, we go further down the road with Dre and his life in Millennium Records. Now, Dre, of course, comes from the old school of hip-hop. He knows how hip-hop used to be, the way it started in the park, the essence of how it used to be. But at this point in time, as you know, if you're following things in real life in real time around 2002, hip-hop is starting to change. So things are sort of happening around the label. And when Dre is dealing with his boss, Simon, who has played none other than Wendell Pierce of The Wire fame and many other different shows and movies as well, he's sort of encouraging him to sign these acts that are sort of on the fringe of, you know, hey, these guys, are they real? Are these parodies? Are you kidding me? During this time when he's sort of scouting these questionable talent, he meets this cab driver, Chris, played by Mos Def, aka Cavi. Now, Chris, or Cavi, is a cab driver who works as a taxi driver during the day and then performs at night as a rapper. And Dre has seen him also has heard his music and is impressed with him. But Dre's boss, Simon, wants him to sign this hilarious parody of a rap act called Ren and 10. Can't make this up. Called the Hip-Hop Dalmatians. And they have a demo song, like it's almost like a play off of The Boy Is Mine, and it's called That Hoe Is Mine. And so that's who he wants him to sign to Millennium Records. And Dre's not feeling it at all. So at some point in time, Dre's like, yo, look, man, I got involved to do this, to do real A&R work, to scout real talent. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I'm choosing for the love of the game more than anything else, and I'm out. So then he decides to quit and decides that he wants to try to form his own label. And he decides to call that label, you guessed it, Brown Sugar Records. And what he decides he wants to do is he wants to focus on bringing back real hip hop, bringing it back to the essence, because he thinks that there's still a spot out there for people who like real music. And the music that his generation sort of fell in love with, the one that he grew up hearing, you know? And he approaches Cavi about the idea. And while Cavi is sort of skeptical at first because of what he was previously involved with Millennium, he manages to sign him to his label. Now, obviously, when Reese first hears about this, she is not supportive of the idea. I mean, when you have a lady who's working as an attorney and your husband is working as an A&R, and I'm guessing as a somewhat successful label, and you have a certain amount of financial success and you're living in New York City, eventually you're worried about where the money's going to come from, because when you're running your own label, money's not going to come like soon. So she's wondering whether or not they're going to be able to survive financially, whether or not they're going to be living on her buck and her buck alone. And so Sid thinks it's a great idea as her and Dre start spending more time together. You know, as a result of him leaving his label, she settles into her post to XXL and continuing to write this book. And she sort of takes, I guess, like a partnership, sort of like in the label. And as they get closer and closer, Reese really gets jealous of the fact that Dre and Sydney are so close because they've been friends for all these years. As a matter of fact, there's a scene in the movie where Sid is working out in the gym and they're like doing this boxing exercise or kickboxing exercise, and she expressed her frustration working out with Sid while, I guess, like hitting into mitts or something, that she tells her that, you know, all the things about my husband that he won't tell me because I can't get close enough to him because of you. Sort of that's the way what she's inferring. And it's a really, really like interesting moment that the two of them have as a result of that, because she really is jealous because of that. And I think that plays into something that happens a little bit later on. And that really is, I mean, I think a catalyst as far as how things ended up unraveling a little bit later afterwards. So in the meanwhile, Sid also has a relationship going on with Kelby, who's an NBA player, and he proposes to her and she becomes engaged. But Dre isn't really feeling the fact that his friend, his best friend, is going to now be engaged to this guy that she hasn't known that well. And he tells her because he thinks that he's not really authentic. Like, he's not real. Like, what he's putting on is really it's a fad. It's a front, that he's not real, that he's fake. And so Sid doesn't really hear into all of that, doesn't really agree. But then later on, as she started like being around Kelby, he sort of understands, like, okay, Dre may have some merit to this, because when she talks to him, he doesn't even read her articles at the magazine, doesn't really pay attention to the things that she's writing. It's almost like he doesn't have any type of interest in the work that she does. And that's a big, big red flag.
Greetings, we're Technically a Conversation, a podcast for curious people by curious people.
Every week, we take turns presenting a new topic, and the other host has no idea what the topic will be.
We strive to educate in a way that's loose and fun. Our topics are all over the place, from light and funny to dark and sometimes spooky.
Some of the topics we've covered include urban legends, civil rights activists, vampires, pop culture icons, the supernatural and occult, spies and espionage, science and astronomy, and other weird and random things.
If any of these topics interest you, give our podcast a shot. Listen and subscribe at technicallyaconversation.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Parental advisory, we might use strong language.
The holidays are near, which means decorating season is here. Ready to style your space with the merriest furnishings and home decor of the season? Whether you have a new mattress or love seat on your wish list, Ashley has you covered when it comes to making your home magical for the holidays. With prices this good, you'll leave with some extra jingle in your pockets. Celebrate the magic of home. Visit an Ashley store near you or go to ashley.com to start shopping.
If your partner doesn't have any type of interest in the work that you do, and, you know, like he's just too busy, like he has no time to read anything it is that you do whatsoever. So then here comes the big part of it, how everything sort of comes into a climax. Eventually, Dre discovers that Reese has been cheating on him with some guy from the gym. And while he's in a recording session with Cavi, he ends up going and figuring out that she's at a restaurant. And so as a result, he brings Sid with him to catch her in the act. They end up going to the restaurant, and this is how the whole situation plays out. And I think, to me, this is probably one of the most hilarious exchanges out of the whole movie.
Richard. Yo, Chris.
What's up?
You got your cab with you?
Doing? It's Dre. That guy goes to our gym. Dre, think about this, okay? Let's just go. Dre, you don't want to do this.
What's up? Surprise! Reese, what is How you doing? Hey! Guys, what's up? How you doing? It's funny running into you here, singing love songs to each other.
Dre.
Shit, that was pretty. Don't stop on my account.
Dre, what are you-
Yeah. Me and Sid, we was just in the neighborhood. We thought, you mind if we join you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Have a seat. Sit down, girl, why you all stiff? Racy Will. See, you got on my favorite dress with this area all like, hey, wow, all out. Greased up from a man. I'm sorry, I'm Dre Ellis. You are? Richard Lawson. Richard Lawson. All right, you sound educated. Good for you, girl.
Good. You guys, friends of Reese's, huh?
Yeah, well, actually, the funny thing is, she's my wife. What?
Oh.
Look,
Hey, I'm sorry.
that's cool. That's cool. How could you know? She ain't wearing the $15,000 ring that I bought her ass. I should say still paying off, but
Actually,
you
I'm
understand.
paying for it.
Could you not put my business out on the street?
joining us for dinner?
Listen, my
No,
man.
you know what? We were just about to leave.
I'm trying to order the most expensive bottle of champagne because we finna celebrate.
Dre.
We gonna celebrate what? My divorce. How about that? And some pork chops,
Dre,
because I'm
come
kind of
on.
hungry.
I can't see
All
you.
right?
And
Good, I want to
Come
make
on.
a scene. You know what I'm saying? Bye-bye, Richard Lawson.
Embarrassing.
It's just, I love the fact when Dre goes, my divorce, and some pork chops, so I'm kind of hungry. And the other thing that kills me is the Richard Lawson. Yeah, you sound educated. Good for you, girl. He trips me out. Man. So that happens, and he catches her red-handed. Like, she can't even deny it anymore. She tried to play it off as much as she could in the restaurant, but the way that he kind of set that up was very masterful. So then they end up going back to Sid's apartment, and Sid's trying to make sure he's okay. And then they share this moment, which definitely complicate things a whole lot further. So if things weren't going downhill then, they definitely start going downhill now, because damn.
You want anything? Coffee?
Nah.
Vodka?
I wanted them pork chops. I told you we should have stayed.
How can you joke about this? Because I would be flipping out.
Sid, I do not know I guess I'll break down later. You know what, though? I'm glad I know now. I guess I always knew deep down inside that we weren't meant to be together.
Yeah? And when'd you figure that out?
The night before the wedding. Something happened between me leaving the house and, getting to the wedding. But, you know, I shook it off because, damn, I had a beautiful woman that loved me to death. So, you know, I took all those feelings and locked them away because not everybody can marry their one true love. It was a pretty difficult situation. Do you, you know anybody like that?
No, I don't.
No.
But I do know somebody that was friends with this guy a long time, and she thought maybe it was more than just friends, but something happened to her coincidentally before your wedding. And she realized it was nothing more than just friends.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Just friends?
Just friends. I can't believe what just happened.
I know. I don't know what to say.
Well, that escalated quickly. real quickly. It's wild. So this all comes about, and now it's just like they finish, and the next day they're sort of like, hey, I don't know how this thing is gonna work out. Sid's sort of freaking out because she's like, you're still married, I'm engaged, like we shouldn't even done this. This was a mistake. And he was like, well, you're still gonna marry this dude after what we just did last night? And she was just like, this can't happen. Like, you know, we can't do this anymore. It was like, she's like, this was really a mistake. It really was a big mistake. But definitely, as they were talking and everything happened, they were talking about this. And all of a sudden, it's like she comes to the realization that she can't marry this dude, Kelby. I mean, really, this was a reaction, the result of Dre marrying Reese. And she didn't love this dude. And she calls off the engagement. And as she's looking for Dre to finally catch up with him to tell him how she really feels, she sees Reese and Dre as they're parting with each other, knowing that they're getting ready to divorce and separate and everything else like that, after Reese and Dre have a talk with each other to sort out whatever it is that they're going through. And then she pretty much mistakes that for it being more than what it actually is. So this leads to a point in time where they sort of separate for a little while. Sid has finished her book, and the book is called I Used to Love Him. And H-I-M, you know, with dots after the H, the I, and the M, like an acronym. And it reminds me, just like the Common song, I Used to Love Her, the song that was about hip hop. And though the book is based on her love affair with hip hop, it actually is a timeline of her love for Dre throughout the years. So whenever you hear her talk about when she fell in love with hip hop, and when she's talking about hip hop throughout the book and throughout her narration in the movie, what she's actually talking about, she's talking about Dre. So that's really, I think, the clever thing about the metaphor of hip hop and the love source, the actual love source in this movie being a person. And now hip hop was a metaphor for this person in this movie. So I thought it was really cleverly done. This is how it comes, is that Sid goes on Angie Martinez's show on Hot 97, and Cavi has his first single, and he gets it to be able to be played on Hot 97. So throughout all this time, he's working in the background. He finally works with people, works with the radio execs to get Cavi's single played on Hot 97. And he works his ass off to get this done. And they're going to play it on Angie Martinez's show, which is one of the top morning shows in New York for everybody. Everybody knows this. And Sid is doing an interview to promote her book. And so she gives a message on the show that says she want to give a shout out to hip hop. She said, I love you and I love you still. And as they're saying that, Cavi and Dre are listening, and it made a reference to something about Cavi calling Dre Humphrey Bogart earlier, and he said, you better go get her, Humphrey. So they drive in Cavi's cab down to Hot 97 Studios, and Dre calls in on the phone when they're taking callers, and this is the scene that famously the movie ends on as they're getting ready to play Cavi's single that Dre calls in and talks to Sydney, and finally the big payoff comes.
Okay.
Sydney Shaw, when did you fall in love with hip-hop?
When I heard Kango Crew and Get Fresh Crew.
Well, I don't think you understood the question, so I'm gonna ask you again. Sid, when did you fall in love with hip-hop?
Dre, I've been in love with you from the first day I saw you.
All right, I got a follow-up question. Why did it take you so long to say that?
Because I was scared and hard-headed.
Real hard-headed. So, I'm listening to Hot 97 because I hit English. No. I hear that they are about to play Cavi's first single. So I'm like, yo, this is a big, down here, a big day for Brown Sugar Records. Big things. It's going down, Sid, just like you said it would. And I couldn't be more unhappy. Because for the first time since I can remember, I didn't have you to share my life with. Sydney, I have loved you from the first time I laid eyes on you. And I love you still. You're my heir. So, I don't want to be your friend no more.
And for those of y'all who remember the visual of that, you remember he held up the sign, will you go out with me? Yes, no, or maybe. Remember that old school sign or the note you would pass in elementary school? And that was really cool. And then eventually, Cavi, who has been feeling the Francine through most of the movie, finally musters up the courage to ask her out. And eventually she says yes. And they play Cavi's song on the radio, and then eventually they're playing the music in the park. And it's in the park where Dre and Sid's love for hip-hop began. Everything begins full circle. And then that's the movie. And to me, like I said, the cameos made it really cool. The inclusion of the hip-hop stars made it cool. The reference of a lot of classic hip-hop songs and the crews and everything, and really like the characters being into hip-hop. To me, and that was, to me, what made the movie cool. I mean, the love angle of it was, obviously something that, it was a bonus. I mean, and the fact that it was Sanaa Lathan and Taye Diggs and Mos Def and Queen Latifah obviously being two of the best, rap artists turned actors out there that are truly committed to the craft and have really been exceptional at that role in acting. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then to add on people like Nicole Parker and Boris Kodjoe. But I thought that's really what made it great to me. A lot of people took this movie and they saw that it was corny and everything else, man. But I thought that the movie was pretty cool, man. I'm not going to sit up there and call it a classic. I mean, to me, if it is, it's a cult classic, definitely, because of the subject matter. It's a hip hop movie to me. It's a hip hop movie and it's a love movie. Romantic comedy, definitely. And the inclusion of really the elements of classic hip hop and these hip hop artists, and it really being based around the fact that people wanted to get back to the essence of what hip hop was and was supposed to be and should be. I thought that was really, really cool, man. So this is 20 years later. It's still a favorite that a lot of people like to watch on, like BET, on TV One, on Bounce, like all these different black-based channels. It's a favorite. And every once in a while when it's on, I'll pull it up and watch it because it's still an entertaining watch, and it's, still reasonably funny and entertaining to watch, actually, man. And then with the soundtrack, the soundtrack was a reasonably good listen. There was The Love of My Life for Ode to Hip-Hop with Common and Erykah Badu, which actually won a Grammy for Best R&B Song, is a song now 20 years afterwards, produced by Erykah Badu, Raphael Sadiq, James Poyser. Just awesome song. A really great video as well. Other songs on the soundtrack as well. There was Act 2, Love of My Life, which actually was also on Things Fall Apart, which had The Roots and Common on it as well. There was Brown Sugar, which is the song that you heard in the movie that was done by Cavi, actually done by Mos Def. Then there's Brown Sugar Raw, produced by Black Star, who is Mos Def and Talib Kweli. There's Bring Your Heart by Angie Stone and Diamond Stone. Then you also have the Paid in Full 7 Minutes of Madness, the Cold Cut remix with Eric B. and Rakim. That gives you an old school flavor to it. Then one of my most underrated tracks on here as well is It's Going Down Before My Blackalicious, Latifah the Truth Speaker, and Kiki Wyatt, produced by High Tech and Chief XL. Man, there's some underrated tracks on this soundtrack just outside of Love of My Life and Ode to Hip-Hop. Definitely a soundtrack that's not up there with probably the best of all time, but there are some sleepers definitely on this soundtrack. I think it fit the movie well. Like I said, when you're looking at a soundtrack for a movie, you're looking for something that fits the movie well. And I think that with this, it kind of fits the movie. The movie wasn't over the top, so the soundtrack wouldn't be over the top. There are some sleepers on here without a shadow of a doubt. So got to give them their props. Easy Conversation with Joe Scott, produced by Dre and Vidal. Another joint, man. Definitely something, like I said, very, very easy, nothing over the top, and a very solid joint. So let us know in the conversation what you think about it. Pop culture, Brown Sugar, the movie, 20 years old. Holla at us. Let us know what your memories of it. What's your favorite quote? Favorite time of the movie? Also, let us know about the soundtrack. You got any favorite tracks that you want to mention as well? Hit us up on social media. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let's continue the conversation. And that is going to wrap up yet another edition of The Vault. Please make sure you are visiting us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. There you can learn more about the show, check out our past episodes, join our mailing list, leave a review, or if so inclined, you can leave us a voice note. Click the blue microphone in the bottom right-hand corner to leave us a voice note to let us know what you think about the show, or to just show us some love. To support the show, click the coffee cup shaded in yellow in the bottom left-hand corner to access our Buy Me a Coffee page. On Buy Me a Coffee, you can give a small monetary donation to support the show to ensure that we can keep the vault open for many years to come. You can also visit us on social media at Vault Classic Pod on IG, Twitter, and on TikTok. Also hit us on YouTube and our Facebook page. Like and follow us on social media, subscribe to the pod and the YouTube channel. We do it here all for you. We appreciate the support, and if you have a friend, tell a friend, and make sure that that friend tells a friend. Always remember to keep your headphones on and your music loud, but not too loud. And as we close, we'd like to remind everyone to dream big, because dreams are the basis for creation. Always create, motivate, and elevate, because you were never destined or created to stay stationary or ordinary in this life. And on that note, we say peace.
Thank you for listening and coming into The Vault. Please subscribe and visit us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com.